The United States and Japan have reaffirmed their defense alliance in Indo-Pacific region. This was among the outcomes of a meeting on Friday between Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga and US President Joe Biden in Washington. Suga is the first foreign leader to visit White House since Biden took office. High on their agenda was their policy towards China. Nathan King has more.
Warm greetings and side by side at a press conference here on the South Lawn of the White House. Demonstrations to the world as the first leader invited to the White House of the Biden presidency, where the lens of this administration will be very much on what they call the Indo-Pacific and of course the Japanese alliance, which has been in place since the end of World War II. They of course are playing up this informal arrangement of democracies, as they call them, in the Indo-Pacific. Japan, the US, India and Australia. They're rolling out, they say, more COVID drugs, as we heard from the Quad Summit last month, but also focusing increasingly on security. Beijing regards this loose grouping as essentially a containment exercise. Also, Joe Biden saying that there will be cooperation on supply chains when it comes to 5G and beyond technologies, telecommunications, and also semiconductors and the like. Japan is much more enmeshed with China in terms of its economic relationships, and the US is worried about being too dependent.
Japan and the United States are both deeply invested in innovation and looking to the future. That includes making sure we invest in and protect the technologies that will maintain and sharpen our competitive edge.
In light of the current regional situation, the severe security environment, the importance of our alliance has reached new heights based on such common recognition. At today's summit, we engaged in far-reaching and candid exchanges of views on each other's political principles, challenges faced in each of our nations, our common vision, and other matters.
But Prime Minister Suga has a difficult balancing act. While they depend heavily on security from Washington, they also essentially rely on the trade between China and Japan as well. It's going to be very interesting to see how this visit is sold to the Japanese people and the American people as well, especially as there are deep differences between Seoul and Tokyo, key allies, which were the first visit by the US Secretary of State, especially when it comes to unveiling of a new policy when it comes to Pyongyang, the DPRK, North Korea. There are a lot of balls in the air when it comes to the Indo-Pacific, but you can tell that this is where the Biden administration want to focus. They're withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, but their eye militarily, economically, and elsewhere is very firmly on the Asia-Pacific region, especially when it comes to climate change as well. Nathan King, CGTN at the White House.
Also, a joint statement from the talks in Washington underscored the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. It said the two sides encouraged a peaceful resolution of cross-strait issues. Washington and Tokyo say they share serious concerns regarding human rights in China's Hong Kong and Xinjiang. The US and Japan recognize the importance of candid conversations with China. They also acknowledge the need to work with China on areas of common interest. Before the talks, China on Friday said it would closely watch the results of the meeting and respond accordingly.
The international community is paying close attention to this meeting. China is not against the two sides in developing normal bilateral relations. They should help promote mutual understanding and trust among regions and countries, and also promote peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific. It shouldn't target third parties or harm the interests of third parties. China's stances on Taiwan, Hong Kong, the South China Sea, and the Diaoyu Islands has been consistent and clear. We are determined to safeguard national sovereignty, security, and development. The US and Japan should seriously consider China's concerns and requests, and shouldn't adopt words or actions that may interfere in China's internal affairs or harm China's interests.
For more insight into the Biden-Suga talks, let's cross live to Professor Joseph Gregory Mahoney in the U.S. city of Memphis. So, Professor, from Trump to Biden, from Abe to Suga, do you think the United States have been trying to make Japan a pivot country in the region to form a so-called Indo-Pacific alliance against China?
I think that's clearly been Biden's objective. It was something we saw, I think, rather ham-handedly under the Trump administration. I think Biden is pressing much more diplomatically in the traditional sense of the word. But I think the thing that we really saw today, you know, there was concern that Suga would appease Biden and take a harder stance against China. And I think what we really saw was him simply saying that there was a desire to peacefully maintain the status quo, which is really literally nothing new. So I think he clearly wanted to avoid antagonizing Beijing, but at the same time be gracious to his host in the White House.
Professor, if we take a look at that joint statement from the two leaders, the US and Japan have acknowledged the need to work with China on areas of common interest. So how do these two countries define common interest?
Well, I think with respect to their common interest with China, that includes combating climate change and to a certain extent cooperating on COVID containment and recovery. And I think they would both like to see, or at least prevent, more deterioration in economic relations. Certainly that's the case from Japan, with China being its largest trading partner.
Also, Professor, the two countries' leaders have talked quite a lot maritime issues, but leaves out the recent hotspot of Japan's plan to discharge radioactive nuclear contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean. Why is that?
Well, you know, what's really interesting is the Fukushima release hasn't received much discussion in mainstream US media, and the coverage we have seen has emphasized the Japanese position that it's not a significant environmental danger. No reporter raised it today during the press conference, and neither did Biden. Instead, Suga mentioned supporting Biden's call for decarbonization and other climate change combat efforts. So I think he effectively, we might say, greened his comments and perhaps distracted people from the Fukushima issue.
Thank you very much, Professor Joseph Gregory Mahoney in Memphis.